On this episode of Doing the Most, we are going to be revisiting our recipe for aged eggnog.
Homemade brews and various how-tos, everything from meat to roast, bake creation, fermentation, inebriation, doing the most.
As fall begins, it's time to make your aged eggnog. That way it's ready in time for the holidays. The ingredients for aged eggnog are 12 egg yolks, 6 egg whites, 1 pound powdered sugar, 3 cups brandy, 1 cup bourbon, 2 quarts half and half, 1 quart whole milk, a half teaspoon of salt, kosher, and 2.5 teaspoons of nutmeg. We're going to be starting off by putting our whisk attachment on the KitchenAid. If you don't have a KitchenAid, you can do all this whisking by hand, but it's recommended that you have a couple of strong-armed children around to do the whisking for you. It makes the recipe a whole lot less effort. Start out by separating your eggs. Since this recipe calls for 12 yolks and 6 whites, we'll be removing 6 of those whites. Throw them in the freezer for meringues or egg white omelets later. Throw your yolks into your mixing bowl, and you're going to mix these until they're kind of whisked and combined. We're revisiting this recipe honestly because our video and audio production quality has gone up in the last year, and we figured we could do this video better and shorter and give folks a reminder that it's time to make your aged eggnog. Can't stress that enough. While your egg yolks are being mixed together, it's good to measure out your alcohol. So first we're starting off with our bourbon and then our 3 cups of brandy. I prefer Old Granddad bourbon, and Christian Brothers brandy always seems to be available at the local shop. Then we're adding in our pound of powdered sugar. You're just gonna add this kind of gradually. You want every addition of powdered sugar to combine mostly before you add your next addition. This can take a couple of minutes. You may have to scrape down the sides. Usually it's going to be combined enough that when you start adding your alcohol to it, it will kind of blend up together just fine. And once those are combined, we'll start slowly drizzling in our alcohols. Now, I say slowly because we don't want any risk of the eggs curdling, and the slower you add this, the less risk of that you have. When I posted this recipe online last year, some folks were saying they wish that I had shown in full the pour on the alcohols. So I'm showing it here so you can kind of get an idea of the pace. It's just a little bit at a time, over and over and over again, so it gets combined all in one. And the actual time on this was about 2 minutes. So if you're trying to time it out similar to how I did it, just make sure you're slowly, gradually adding it over about 2 minutes. That should be on the right pace. Once that's done, I am switching out my attachment from the whisk to the paddle. Now this paddle attachment has a scraper on it that's good at scraping the bottoms. I have found that for making eggnog and similar recipes like this, that scraper's good at getting any of those stubborn bits of egg off the bottom of the bowl. So I'm just leaving this on here for a little bit to make sure that everything is getting picked up from the bottom of the bowl. Then we start with our dairy products. Here we've got 2 quarts of half and half, and we're gonna add a quart of milk after that. I have found that this order of operations, eggs, sugar, alcohols, heavy dairy, light dairy, seems to be the smoothest way of doing this. So now I'm just switching back to the whisk attachment and back in business. The last thing you want is any strings of egg yolk hanging out in your eggnog. That makes for a sort of unpleasant experience when you surprise someone with that. So I just poured my milk into the half and half container so I could measure out a quart. That's just my shortcut on not getting another measuring container dirty. So here we're adding the milk. And that's gonna pretty well max out the capacity of my KitchenAid. And of course, pour one for yourself because you deserve it. Here I'm adding the salt. That is kosher salt. I have a preference against iodized salt because I do not like the flavor of iodine, so I always use kosher or non-iodized salt. Once that is all blended up, we're gonna move that to a 7-quart Dutch oven for staging. Then I'll just be cleaning out that bowl really quick and we'll add our egg whites. Now here we're gonna whip up the egg whites to kind of a soft peak. We are not making meringues or doing anything culinarily extravagant here. We're just trying to make sure there are no stringy, gelatinous egg whites left in there. And so to whip them is the best way of ensuring that they're going to mix evenly throughout the rest of the eggnog batch. I prefer freshly grated nutmeg, so I did that here. This microplane is one of my favorite things that we have in our Doing the Most kitchen because it is incredibly effective and has a little measuring tool on the collection plate on the back there. The nutmeg goes into the egg whites and we just let that mix completely. I have now resorted to laying out a towel to catch any of my spills. And then simply we're just gonna pour the egg whites into the eggnog mixture and kind of loosely and aggressively fold those egg whites in to make sure they're mixed throughout. This is gonna sit in bottles for about 6 weeks, possibly longer, and so any air that was in those egg whites is gonna deflate anyway. Again, we're just trying to get it mixed thoroughly. Now, some of you also wish that I had a funnel when I made this video last year, so here's my funnel as recommended by ATK. This is their top rated funnel. And we're filling the bottles incrementally. So a scoop per bottle until all are filled. That way, every single bottle has a very similar mixture of eggnog. You're not getting too much white foam in one and not enough in another, too much nutmeg in one and not enough in the other. This just helps create some consistency across all 5 bottles. And then you're gonna have a little bit left over. Don't worry about that. You're gonna use that to top up the bottles after the foam kind of recedes. And there you have it. Let it sit for 6 weeks. Make sure you have no salmonella and you are ready to serve. Keep an eye out because we're gonna be tasting a bottle of this that was made last year. It's been sitting in the back of the fridge for 1 year. So look forward to that. As always, you can find us at doingthemost.org or follow us on Instagram and Pinterest at doingthemostok. Thanks for watching.